So I want to talk a little bit today about fatigue, immunity, and stress, and how all of those things affect one another. One of the things that I see most often in almost all of my patients is a tendency to overdo it. And what that oftentimes will lead to is stress, fatigue, and it starts to affect three things primarily. It doesn't have to be this way, but oftentimes you'll start to notice changes in your immunity. People will get sick more often. They'll feel like they don't have what they need to fight off everything that comes through. They'll find that it affects their sleep, which is a really big problem because if you're not getting plenty of rest and you're not recovering from spending too much. And so people will start to develop these mild sleep problems. They'll have poor night's sleep a couple of nights a week, then it turns into every night. Then they start waking up and not going back to sleep. And that leads to a very detrimental pattern because they're not only spending too much, but they're not recovering. And then finally, digestive problems, things like heartburn, sour stomach, and that sort of thing. Inability to eat without getting bloated and fatigued after the meal and having a need to sleep. And so those are the three primary areas where I see stress impacting people. And so one thing I like to try to point out is oftentimes you don't need more energy. You don't need to be able to perform more and do better. You actually need to learn how to do less. And that's really not taught in our culture, and it's not even really encouraged in our culture, and that's one reason it's a difficult conversation sometimes. But to become aware of where we're spending our energy, how much we're spending, because oftentimes when we are spending too much of our energy, we're not aware of it. We don't realize where it's all going. We just meet every demand that comes at us, and at the end of the day, we're exhausted, and we can't figure out how we got there. And so becoming aware of ourselves and where we spend most of our energy and finding ways to let go of the things that we don't have to necessarily do or do every day, and holding on to the things that are important. Certainly practices like yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong are ways to help us to become more aware of our bodies, more aware of our surroundings and how we negotiate our energy so that we're making better conscious decisions. I use a metaphor lots of times of money and banking accounts with my patients because they understand and it makes sense. You have a certain amount of energy that you create every day. You eat, you drink, you sleep, and your body produces energy out of that. And that's similar to your checking account. You make a paycheck, you put it in, and you spend it to pay your bills. And so that's your daily in and out. You sleep good, you eat good, and you spend what you make. Then you have this reserve, or it's similar to your checking account, or your savings account, I'm sorry. You have this reserve energy, and that is somewhat finite. You're born with a certain amount of this reserve energy, and you'll never spend it all in your lifetime, but certainly as it depletes, you start to become less able to fight off disease, less able to heal from injuries, and less able to age in a healthy way. And so what I tell people is be aware of that checking account. Be aware of how much you're making, how much energy you get. When you wake up in the morning, if you slept well, you've been eating well, you have a good amount of energy. Be aware of that. Be aware of how much you're spending throughout the day. And certainly if you find that you get tired, you push through and you hit your second wind, that second wind is those reserves that you're tapping into. And be aware of it when you do that. If you're doing that every day, then you're using up your savings. And there's only a certain amount of it there. You can't necessarily put more in, but you can be cognizant of how much is coming out of there. And so these are things that I encourage all of my patients to do because our society, our culture drags more out of us than we usually can make. And so being aware of the decisions that we make, seeing where everything goes will certainly help your health in every aspect. If you're sleeping well, if you're having good digestion, your immune system will always be better if you're rested and feeling well. If you have any more questions about this or anything that has anything to do with this, please email me, ask me. I have lots to share on these topics and would love to be able to help out. So here's some ideas of things that you can use to help you manage your energy or negotiate the energy that you have to get through your day. Certainly things like meditation, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, these are all practices that help us to become more mindful amongst a lot of other things. And they'll help you in every decision that you make, but particularly if you're focusing on the decisions of, do I have enough energy for this? Do I have enough time for this? Is this going to make me stressed out later in my day? These are practices that will help you become more aware of all of the decisions you make, amongst lots of other things. So those are great places to start. Also, when you find yourself tired, whether it's 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 8 o'clock in the evening, if you find yourself sagging, honor that. Your body's trying to tell you something and listen. And then think about what you have for the rest of the day and imagine what do I not have to do and what does have to be done. And that will help you to limit the amount of energy that you're spending beyond that first complement that you have for your day. And so, again, as we said, getting into your second wind is sometimes necessary, but when it's a regular practice, it's very depleting. And finally, whenever possible, just stop and think about the decisions you're making about where your energy is going. People that are on diets do the same thing. They stop and think about what they're going to eat. People that are on budgets stop and think about, where am I spending my money? Whenever you have the chance, stop and think. This is energy that's well spent. This is energy that is potentially wasted. And these just awareness practices can help you to start deciding where everything's going and hanging on to as much of it as you can.